Most people think net worth changes your lifestyle first, but that's not what actually happens. The first thing money changes is your nervous system. At every level of wealth, a different version of reality unlocks, and every version costs something. Because a person worth $0 does not wake up in the same psychological world as a person worth $50 million. They don't think the same, they don't fear the same, they don't imagine the future the same, and nobody prepares you for how strange that transformation feels. Level 1. $0 net worth, the survival identity. At this level, life feels temporary. Everything feels temporary. Your bank account, your plans, your confidence, your sense of control. You are constantly recovering from something. An unexpected bill, a late payment, a broken car, a bad week at work. You are not building a future. You are repairing the present over and over again. People who never experienced financial instability think being broke is motivational. They imagine ambition. They imagine hunger. They imagine late nights and dreams. But real financial stress is not cinematic. It is exhausting. It is checking your bank account before buying food. It is calculating gas money in your head while driving. It is pretending everything is okay while your nervous system quietly burns itself alive, and eventually survival changes your psychology. You stop seeing wealth as realistic. You stop imagining large futures because large futures feel emotionally dangerous. You begin treating ambition like fantasy. Rich people stop feeling human to you. They feel like a different category of existence, as if they were born with access to a hidden version of reality that was never available to your family. That is the real damage poverty creates, not lack of money, lack of imagination, and then one day something changes. Level 2. $10,000 net worth, the first breathing room. $10,000 is not freedom, but if you grew up unstable, it feels enormous. Not because of the number, because of what the number represents. Margin. For the first time in your life, a small emergency no longer feels catastrophic. A bad week no longer destroys everything. You finally experience something wealthy people experience every day without noticing. Peace between disasters. You sleep slightly better. Not peacefully, but better. And psychologically, that changes everything. You start thinking beyond this week, then beyond this month. You begin understanding that money is not only income, it is behavior. Patterns on identity, decision-making. This is usually where obsession begins. You discover investing, you discover business, you discover compound interest, and suddenly the world reorganizes itself in your mind. You stop looking at rich neighborhoods emotionally. Now you study them. You stop envying wealthy people blindly. Now you analyze them, how they speak, how they think, how they spend time, how they move. Your brain realizes wealth may not be magic after all. It may simply be systems repeated long enough, and that thought changes your life forever. Level 3. $100,000 net worth, the dangerous confidence phase. This is where things become psychologically confusing, because now you finally feel momentum. You have savings, investments, progress. You are no longer drowning. And for the first time, your external life starts reflecting internal ambition. You upgrade things slowly. Better apartment, better clothes, better technology, better food. Small luxuries begin entering your life quietly, and each upgrade feels like proof that the suffering meant something, that you escaped something. But this level creates a dangerous illusion. You begin believing you understand money simply because you learned how to earn it. Those are not the same thing. $100,000 creates confidence before wisdom, and confidence without wisdom is expensive. This is usually the phase where ego enters quietly. You compare yourself more. You become addicted to progress. You refresh investment apps constantly. You tie self-worth to growth curves. You become emotionally dependent on momentum, and strangely enough, your fear does not disappear. It mutates. Before you feared having nothing. Now you fear losing progress. That fear becomes fuel. You work harder. You optimize more. You become obsessed with efficiency. Time suddenly feels expensive. Wasted days feel physically painful. You start distancing yourself from people who move slowly, not because you hate them, because they remind you of the version of yourself you are trying to escape. And slowly your old life begins feeling smaller. Level 4. $500,000 net worth. The separation. This is where the emotional distance begins. Your family still loves you. Your friends still know you, but something changes quietly beneath the surface. The gap between your internal world and theirs becomes harder to explain. You think differently now. You calculate risk differently. You value time differently. You no longer make decisions based only on survival. Now you think about leverage, tucked opportunity cost, ownership, scalability. And most people around you cannot relate to that mental framework. Nobody argues openly. Nobody announces the separation dramatically. It happens silently through smaller conversations, shorter calls, declined invitations, different priorities. You start realizing wealth changes every interaction quietly. Some people become uncomfortable around ambition. Some people project insecurity. Some people subtly resent your growth, even while pretending to support it. And the strange part is this: you understand them, because years ago, you were them too. At this level, loneliness enters the story. Not dramatic loneliness. quieter than that. You simply realize fewer and fewer people understand what occupies your mind every day. You also realize something else. Money does not buy happiness directly. It buys control. Control over your time. Control over your environment. Control over who has access to your energy. And control feels addictive once you experience it. Level 5. $1 million net worth. The invisible shift. Most people imagine this moment incorrectly. They think becoming a millionaire feels explosive. They imagine excitement, relief, euphoria. But when it actually happens, it usually feels quiet, almost unsettlingly quiet. You look at the numbers. You refresh the screen, you stare for a second longer than normal, and then life continues, and that silence surprises you more than the money itself, because deep down you expected transformation, you expected your nervous system to finally relax completely, you expected certainty, but wealth does not remove uncertainty, it simply changes its shape. Now you fear maintaining instead of reaching. You begin understanding why wealthy people become protective. You stop broadcasting everything. You value privacy more. Peace becomes more attractive than attention. You also begin seeing money differently. Before money felt emotional, now it feels structural. You think about taxes, asset protection, investments, equity, business systems, long-term preservation. You realize becoming wealthy and staying wealthy are completely different skill sets. And psychologically, another shift happens. You stop viewing successful people as mythical. You no longer feel intimidated by wealth because now you understand the machinery behind it. You realize most fortunes are built slowly, behavior repeated for years, structures built patiently, decisions compounded quietly. That realization changes your relationship with possibility forever. Level 6, $5 million net worth. The control phase. This is where freedom becomes real. Not internet freedom, real freedom. You can finally say no without fear. No to bad opportunities, no to toxic people. No to exhausting environments, no to things that violate your peace. And for the first time in your life, you realize how much of normal society is built around financial pressure. People tolerate terrible lives because they cannot afford alternatives. But now you can. At this level, wealthy people stop caring about appearing wealthy. The performance becomes exhausting. Status symbols lose emotional power because real wealth feels quieter than luxury marketing promised. You begin understanding why some wealthy people disappear from social media and noise. They are not hiding success. They are protecting peace. Your life becomes less stimulating externally but far more peaceful internally. You stop chasing constant validation. You stop needing people to understand your journey. You stop explaining your ambition. And ironically, the wealthiest mindset you develop at this stage has nothing to do with money. It is selectiveness. You become extremely selective with time, attention, energy, relationships, information, because you finally understand something poor people are rarely allowed to learn. Peace is one of the highest forms of wealth. Level 7. $10 million net worth. The legacy awareness. At this level, money stops being personal. It becomes architectural. You think about children you don't even have yet. You think about future versions of your family living lives your grandparents could never imagine. And suddenly success changes meaning entirely. You stop thinking only about income. Now you think about permanence, structures, trusts, ownership, long-term systems that survive beyond your lifetime. You realize wealth disappears in one generation unless someone intentionally designs it to survive, and nobody taught you how to build that architecture. You are learning it in real time. This level also changes how you see your parents. You finally understand how much fear they carried financially, how many decisions were made from limitation instead of freedom. And instead of resentment, you begin feeling compassion, because now you understand how exhausting survival actually was. You also begin understanding that the greatest gift money provides is not luxury. It is psychological safety, the ability for future generations to grow without inheriting constant fear. That changes you deeply, because now every decision echoes forward. Level 8, $50 million net worth. The perspective distortion. At this level, wealth stops feeling like money. It feels like infrastructure. Your reality becomes fundamentally different from normal society. Not emotionally superior, just structurally different. You stop interacting with prices the same way. Time becomes infinitely more valuable than consumption. You think less about earning and more about preserving. Allocation replaces ambition, and strangely enough, this level can become emotionally dangerous because normal life stops reflecting your internal reality. You become increasingly disconnected from ordinary problems. Your environment becomes hyper-controlled. Your circle becomes smaller, private. The world begins treating you differently everywhere you go. Access changes, service changes, conversations change. And if your identity is not stable, this level can distort your psychology completely, because once survival disappears entirely, meaning becomes the new challenge. That is the irony nobody talks about. Human beings are designed to struggle towards something, and when financial struggle disappears completely, many people discover they never built an identity beyond achievement. So eventually the question changes. It is no longer, how do I make money? Now it becomes, what is any of this actually for? And somewhere in that silence, you finally understand the truth about wealth. The real transformation was never financial. It was psychological. You stop seeing wealth as luck. You stop seeing successful people as mythical. You stop seeing yourself as temporary, and for the first time in your life, the future feels larger than the past. That is the moment everything changes. Because generational wealth is not a number. It is a different starting line. And somewhere years from now, someone in your family will grow up believing opportunity is normal. They will never understand the invisible ceiling you spent your entire life breaking through. They will never know how heavy survival felt. They will never know how many nights you sat awake terrified it would all collapse. And that is the point. The greatest financial success is creating a life where the people after you never inherit your fear. That is wealth.